Hey, what's up everyone? It's Dubbase here, and welcome to my Woods Expansion Loot Guide. I'm going to cover all of the new areas that were added in the 12.9 update, and there is a lot of loot to get through, so let's jump right into it. The first area that we're going to be covering today is the new Emercom Medical Camp, which is actually an area added to the old section of the map right next to RUAF roadblock. Moving right into the camp, I always orient myself with this red fire truck, and right next to it in a green tent, there's a duffel bag, which many people frequently skip. And heading further back to the left, there's some ration spawns on the right-hand side, which, as you can see, you'll frequently find sugar, as well as a medical bag on the chair to the left of it. Right outside of this tent, you will also find a ration supply crate, which is a great way to farm cigarettes for the early mechanic quest. And there's another wooden crate, which is a medical supply crate right nearby. There are two guard towers. In front of this guard tower, there's some ration spawns. And if you do check all the way up in one of these big green guard towers, there are green weapon crates. But typically I suggest skipping these, as it's a very good way to alert your enemies that you are there. Moving on to the ambulances, it can be good practice to check the back of the ambulance, as I've heard there can be rare spawns there, but I've never seen one myself. And moving into the northern half of the camp, you will see a bunch of shipping containers, and this contains most of the good loot. This really creepy one with the bodies, you can walk silently towards the back, and there's high tier medical spawns on that back table. I found a survival 12 kit early wipe there, which was so useful. Moving out of the dead body shipping crate, there's two other crates right next to it. In the one closest, I always check this metal tin. I've got a feeling there's a good spawn in there, although I haven't found anything yet. And one crate over, you'll find this weapons box. And keep in mind, you cannot sneak through the boxes right here. You need to go around this UN truck to get to the behind part. And right behind these crates, there is this wooden technical supply crate, which has so many great spawns. Heading along the wall, you'll find a duffel bag, as well as a med bag right next to it, and two more shipping crates, which are heavily medical focused. I always check these metal shelves, as there can be various spawns among those, as well as I always look very carefully at each one of these tables, all these different units. You never know what you might find in here. And there's also, of course, this medical bag as well. Moving across the northern wall, you'll find this medical supply crate, which could have potential supplies, and another wooden crate next to that, which is another ration supply crate if you're still hunting for those cigarettes or food and water. And there is a second level to this camp. Right up the stairs, you'll find this green weapon box, and I always check near sleeping bags, as there are sometimes rare loot spawns. And heading over to the next box, there is a higher tier weapon box. And that's about it for within the camp itself. Don't forget about the two towers, which you could find the green weapon boxes in there. Otherwise, I do suggest heading outside right to the north. Moving out of the northern entrance here, you will see right to the right, there's this old construction concrete unit. There's a duffel bag on one side, and if you jump over and head to the other side, there's also a nice weapons crate here as well. Don't forget about these, they're frequently missed. Moving on from the Emercom Camp, we're going to visit a familiar location that's been transformed in the new update, Sniper Rock. To get up on Sniper Rock, I think it's most useful to orient myself by using the old paracord extract, which is marked as Mountain Stash on this map. Just head to the left and you will notice a small embankment of rocks. And this is your point where you're going to jump up and find where this secret high tier loot is. You follow this path on the way up, probably a little bit less sloppy than the way that I do, and you will come to this fork in the rock right in front of you. There's one path that goes to the right and one path that goes to the left, and I'll first show you the path to the right, which leads to Sniper Scav's bed. So there are rare loot spawns here. I find a lot of chainlets. Right now, the Christmas ornaments, tons of them spawn. There's a horse here. Heading back the way that we came, it's easy to get to this next area. You just follow the exact same fork that we just took, but instead of going right, you take this rock stairway up to the left. Upon reaching the top, you will encounter a large concrete underground bunker. After venturing inside, you will find what's essentially a mini marked room, and there is similar loot that you'll find at Sniper Scav's bed. Amazingly, there's even more loot added to this mountain, but to get to it, you're going to need to head to the opposite side of the mountain on the northern face. And to get there, you could again orient yourself by using the mountain stash extract and just run to the right instead of heading to the left like we did for the last location. Once you reach the northern part of the mountain, you will encounter this sparsely wooded area that looks like it features a series of switchbacks. You can ignore the switchbacks and sprint straight to the top, and you'll encounter a next loot area, which I call Antenna. The Antenna has 3 primary loot spawns. The first is a wooden technical supply crate, which has great stuff like fuel conditioner. It has a toolbox, and right to the left of the toolbox, there's actually a utility spawn where I've found stuff like hose and other objects like that. Moving on from Antenna, you can simply follow the trail to the right, and you will quickly encounter against the mountain the next area that we're going to loot. This is a decent area. It has some ammo spawns, but most notably this green weapon crate, as well as a toolbox next to this metal structure. Moving on from this area, you can follow the trail to the right, but as soon as it forks, hang a left and continue against the mountain, and you'll encounter a bunker door, which appears to be sealed and does not actually have any use. Again, this has a bunch of ammo spawns on all of the crates, so look carefully because I find a lot of BS ammo, found in raid BS ammo, and of course the green weapon box as well. The next area we'll be covering is directly east of Sniper Rock, and I'm going to call it Old Sawmill, as I've been reading online that this area of the map is actually an old port of a map in one of Battlestate's old games, Contract Wars. Old Sawmill is not a huge area and is comprised of 2 main buildings. The first building that I'm going to be covering has a giant antenna sticking out of it, and inside there are lots of possibilities for tech spawns. So look carefully throughout the entire area. There is a toolbox, but look in all of these shelves. There's the weapons crate, of course, that you can check, and look in each of the server racks to make sure that you're not missing any tech spawns. After looting the antenna building, you can now move to the other main building, which is the sawmill with an ATV parked right outside. Once inside, on the ground floor, there's a wooden technical supply crate, which again has lots of goodies possibly inside. There are lots of loose loot spawns, so make sure that you look around closely. And these wooden shelves, they are typically indicative of utility spawns, so things like water filters and fuel. And on the opposite side, there are metal shelves which have possible tool spawns. Moving up the stairs, on one of the sides there are more of those wooden shelves, as well as another wooden box, which is actually a ration supply crate. So again, if you're hunting for those cigarettes or food and water. Check carefully around the satellite, as you never know when there might be loose tech. And sleeping bags have sort of been a hint from Battlestate this patch for looking at rare loot spawns. Moving up onto the other side, there's another sleeping bag, so look closely at that to see if there's anything you might be missing. And of course, there's a small 4x4 weapon box there as well. And that's about it for this building. The last building in this area is super small and doesn't have many spawns. It's this white metal shack just up the hill from the sawmill. And inside there are some loose loot spawns on the floor as well as a toolbox. Now, I'm not going to cover many hidden stashes in this video, but right next to this terror group truck to the north of Old Sawmill, there's a concrete circle, and right inside is an easy to hit stash. If you're in this area, you should always hit this, so I figured I would include it in this video. Moving on to the next area we'll be covering, just a hop, skip, and a jump away from Old Sawmill to the north is a village. The village is comprised of 2 houses on the left-hand side here and 1 house on the right-hand side. To start going over the loot, let's start on the house that is closest on the left-hand side. Moving through the fence, you'll notice the house on the right, but first let's start to this area on the left. There's like a pig pen. There's a green weapon crate within that pig pen. And if you keep moving towards the direction that we just came from, you'll find a toolbox and also possible utility spawn in this wooden crate inside the shack. Moving into the house now, the first floor is primarily rations. On the table, there are various spawns and also a duffel bag. Moving through the kitchen, you will then find the garage area, which it's always worth checking as there is this toolbox, as well as possible spawns on the shelves and a possible spawn on the tool bench. Moving upstairs, I never find much up here, but there is a rare spawn underneath the bed right next to the window, and the only way I've been able to loot it is to lay prone and pick it up. Moving now to the second house on the western side, I always go straight for the house, but don't forget about this grenade box that's right in front of it. Moving into the house itself, just like the other house, it's primarily ration spawns on all of the tables. Look around carefully because this is a terrific spot to farm MREs. There are several quests where you need MREs. Moving through the door to the rest of the house, you'll find a duffel bag in the small side room. And in the larger room, there's again more ration spawns on the table, another duffel bag, and surprisingly, another grenade case. Moving out of the house, there are 2 side shacks. The first one, be careful. It looks like you need a key or it's just simply inaccessible. So skip this and head towards the back one on the western wall. The back shack in this housing unit is, in my opinion, totally worth checking as there are various utility spawns that can happen again on these wooden shelves. And of course, there's the toolbox in here as well. Before moving across the street to loot the last house, there is a red power box next to this metal shack, and at the base of the power box is a toolbox. Moving across the street now to the east side, there's only one large house that looks like a barn. After going through the fence line, if you look left, there is a small wooden shack, and inside there are 2 toolboxes. One is the big wooden toolbox, and there's the standard smaller toolbox towards the back of the shed. Moving into the house now, if you hang a left upon entry, you'll be entering the kitchen area, which again, on the kitchen table, there's lots of ration spawns. This is a good place to find sugar. And for the first floor, the rest of the loot is in the back room. Upon entering the back room, you'll notice a duffel bag, and right to the right of that couch, there's a microwave box. And to my knowledge, this is the only spot in the village where there are electronic spawns, and I've heard there are even possibilities for graphics cards and Tetrises to spawn here. And that's about it for the first floor. Before leaving this area, check the shed to the right, and towards the back of it, there is a possible utility spawn to the left of the toolbox, and a toolbox itself. The next area that we'll be covering is to the northwest of Village, and this is what I call Cultist Town because this is where they can spawn at night. Other people have heard this called Abandoned Village or Sunken Town. The first area that we're going to cover in the Cultist Town is all of the buildings to the south of the road. The first house that you roll up on from the east, I typically skip as it doesn't seem to have any substantial loot. So I will quickly move on to the next house along the woods. And in this house, it's worth checking because there's a duffel bag next to the stove. There are some ration spawns. And then if you look closely in the tent, there can actually be rare loot spawns. So take a look and be careful because it seems items can spawn underneath the tarp. I mentioned earlier in the video that I'm not planning on covering all of the hidden caches, but there is one that I should certainly mention because it's so easy to get to. To the south of the Sunken Cathedral, if you head into that building, there is a hidden cache hidden in the bushes, so it's worth checking. To get to the sunken church in the middle of the lake, you can either approach from the south via the rocks, which is shown here, or to the north via a small sandbar. I like to come from the south because you can look closely in the boat and there are some rare loose loot spawns that can happen. And moving onto the cathedral itself, the rare loot spawn within here is in the steeple. So you can just look down to get in, then you'll need to look down to get back out. But it's easy and quick to check, but you're exposed in the middle of the lake. Before leaving the lake area, just a short distance away from the church is a small boathouse, and inside there's a toolbox. Moving across the road now to the north, there are 3 houses that I will be covering, and the first starts on the eastern side and is easily identified by the old farm equipment in the yard. Before entering the abandoned farmhouse, easily identified by the blue tractor, there are 2 shacks next door. I like to check one on the table as there can be a loose loot spawn there, and there's a fuel spawn possible in the opposite shack. Moving now into the farmhouse, it seems there are a few loose loot spawns, including a ration spawn between the 2 beds, and I've heard a rumor that underneath the candle in this desk, there's a possible intelligence spawn, so keep checking it. Moving west now to the middle house, inside the house itself, there's not any substantial loot, but right to the east of the house is a marked circle. So look carefully in the grass, especially surrounding the circle, to make sure that you didn't miss any possible spawns. Moving now to the house to the furthest west, look carefully in this cabin because I was able to find a bunch of Christmas ornaments on the live servers, but in offline mode, there was no loose loot spawns that I could see. So it will be interesting to see what is going to spawn here after the Christmas event is over. Very nearby to the Cultist Town, due west, you'll find what I'm describing as Scav Trailer Park due to its close proximity to Scav Bunker. When approaching the camp from the road, there's an isolated white trailer off to the left, and inside you'll find a green weapons box as well as a green grenade case. Moving into the main trailer park section, against the blue fence, there is another green weapons crate, and on the ground level trailer on the table, there is a ration spawn. Moving upstairs to the second floor, on the table, again, another ration spawn, as well as a duffel bag on the bed. And those wooden boxes on the ground are typically indicative of a utility spawn, so check there as well. And underneath the 2-story trailer is a ration supply crate. Just across the road to the west is one of my favorite areas in the new expansion, which has been named Scav Bunker. This area is easily identifiable by the huge radio antenna that towers into the sky around it. Approaching the area from the underground bunker side, on the left you'll find a green weapons crate, and then I typically head straight for the antenna and look carefully in this area for loose tech or military tech. Right next to the antenna is another green weapons box, and on the bed next to the antenna is a grenade box, which can be useful especially on your scav if you have no grenades. Moving now into the underground bunker, right when you come in next to the chair, there is a duffel bag, and then check each server rack for possible tech spawns. There's a toolbox on the ground, and on the opposite wall, there's more possible tech spawns and a server rack. Moving into the second room, you'll notice on the couch immediately a duffel bag. There's a jacket up against the wall and possible ration spawns on the table. And then look carefully next to the bed on the table. There can be rare loot spawns like gold chains. And the final area that we'll be covering in this video is to the south of Scav Bunker, and this might be one of the first locations that you visited for one of the new woods tasks. This is USEC Camp. Let's first dissect the USEC Camp by starting on the northern camp, which is easily designated by an ATV parked out front. Moving into the camp, it's useful to check around the satellite for possible military tech spawns, and there is also a green table which has weapon attachments as well. Next to the generator, there are possible fuel spawns, as well as a technical supply crate. Moving into the open air green tent, you will quickly find a large black weapons box, and on the opposite side, there's a table with some weapon attachments. Moving to the enclosed green tent, inside you will find a ration supply crate, and attached to the green tent under the tarp, there's a stretcher, and next to that are some ration spawns and possible med spawns. Moving on to the southern section of the USEC camp, this is easily identifiable due to the 2 SUVs parked outside. Moving in against the rock wall, there's a black weapons crate and a table next to it with loads of weapon attachments. Next to the beds against the rocks, look very carefully, as I always find MREs here. There can be rare loot spawns up against the rocks, and don't forget there can be a trooper high-com spawn in the corner next to the black weapons box. Moving on to the other side of the tarp, there's a wooden technical supply crate, which can have great stuff like fuel conditioner. On the table, there are possible ration spawns if you're looking for food and water. And lastly, in the bed of the truck, there is a small weapons box. Moving to the very back of the camp, there's an enclosed green tent, which has a wooden medical supplies crate inside, as well as a small black weapons box. And again, look very carefully by beds because you never know what might spawn by them. And that about wraps it up for this video. Did I miss any loot spots? Let me know in the comments section below and join the discussion. Otherwise, please stay tuned for more Escape from Tarkov content coming soon, and please consider subscribing to make sure you don't miss it. Dub out.